Hey everybody, it is time once again for another Rahdo Q&A. And hello everybody, I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means, folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can am. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. Andres says, last year, Mr. Beast organized and won a Dune Imperium tournament. Putin puts his hockey games too. Wins his hockey games too. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. I hope you know who Mr. Beast is. How board gaming could benefit from Mr. Beast to gain popularity. I don't think anyone in the board game industry should sponsor his video. Maybe Mr. Beast could get involved as an entrepreneur. Do you think Mr. Beast could attract new people to the board game hobby? How? Well, first of all, Andres, I don't really know who Mr. Beast is. I don't believe I have ever watched a video of his. I'm aware that he is one of the most popular, most watched YouTube channels. Every time I've ever said, I guess I should watch one of his videos, and I go and to his channel, I look, and it's like, wow, this is wall-to-wall, nothing here am I interested in. This all just sounds like garbage. This sounds like stuff that belongs on the Learning Channel. Or A&E. Remember back when the Learning Channel was actually a learning channel instead of just reality show Drek? I might be mixing up. I might be thinking of the Learning Channel, but I really mean A&E. I'm not quite sure. Remember back when you used to tune in and watch TV shows instead of just stream everything? Anyway, though, yeah, nothing there was interesting. I guess I was tangentially aware that he did do a Dune Imperium tournament, and I guess he won. And so you're suggesting he cheated? I don't know. Is he a really good board gamer? Does he ever talk about board games? Maybe he just really likes board games and he's really good. I couldn't say. I don't know anything about him. But do I think Mr. Beast could attract new people to the board game hobby? How? Sure. Do more board game tournaments and win. Win in every single one of them. I don't care if you win or lose. Let's look. Let's come back to the browser and go to YouTube, Mr. Beast, Dune board game. I assume that will come up. Dune Imperium Uprising Invitational with Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast wins. All right, I don't care about a news story about Mr. Beast winning. That's on Man vs. Meeple talked about it. So I guess I did kind of know that. But okay, no, the Dice Tower, no. Don't tell me articles about it. All right, let's just go to youtube.com, Mr. Beast. What do we got here? All right, there he is, Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast. All right. Yeah. Oh, shut up, you. I do not care about your clickbaity 7 days stranded on an animal or an abandoned city. Oh, my God. This all just sounds like garbage to me. Junk. No, that's not fair. This all sounds like junk food to me. And I would not disparage anybody from enjoying their junk food. I love me a good Snickers, and I know I shouldn't be eating it when I do, but I love Snickers. And so if Mr. Beast is the equivalent of a Snickers bar, although is he? I mean, Snickers at least have peanuts in them, which give you a little bit of protein. I don't know. But anyway, now I'm just going to search for Dune Imperium. There is nothing on his channel about Dune Imperium. I put 10 million Legos in a Dune... oh, God. This just makes my skin crawl, all of this stuff. Okay, you ask, what could Mr. Beast do to help the board game industry that presumably he loves because he did an invitational thing? How about you put your frickin' video on your goddamn channel about it? Why? Why am I only hearing about this from Man vs. Meeple and Dice Tower? Why? If with your 252 million subscribers, why didn't you tell them one week? Why didn't you put together a very nicely edited video along the same lines as what Will Wheaton used to do with Tabletop? I called it Game Night, I think. It's Tabletop. Game Night, of course, is the wonderful Board Game Geek equivalent of Tabletop. And no offense to Lincoln, but yeah, it's great. They do a great job, but they do not have the same Hollywood production. I mean, they don't have movie stars or TV stars coming on to help. So, man, you should. Oh, no, actually, that's not true, of course, because you have Deborah. Oh, and Deborah is great, by the way. Get Deborah to bring more of her friends in for game night. And then you can replace Will Wheaton. But anyway, in the meantime, this is absurd. That Mr. Beast's 2.5 million subscribers, probably not a single one of them, at least based on his channel, know that this happened. And that's a real shame. The only way you know about it is if you're already, you've already drunk the Kool-Aid and you're already a board game geek. That's super disappointing. It would be so great. In the same way that, like I said earlier, Will Wheaton did so much for the board game hobby. And what's his name? The actor who's like a big, strong, burly guy and he plays bad guys, but he's a really huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I can't think of his name. I think he's an Italian-American actor. Because I don't care about Dungeons and Dragons, but that's great. What's the number one thing we could have that would turn more people into board game fans? Celebrities playing board games and talking about how much they love board games. I mean, frickin' South Park. It's not Matt Stone. It's Trey Parker has done so much for the board game by just for fun having the kids every once in a while reference some board game they're playing and making people say, oh, wait, that's not a joke. That's a real thing. I could play the game that Cartman was playing. I will go get that game. That's amazing. We need more of that. What's the Dax Shepard and I can never think of celebrity names. Kristen Bell. For a while they were posting how much they how they were. Didn't they do a thing about how they were playing Catan while they were watching the Oscars or something like that as a 2-player game somehow for some weird reason? That was sending the wrong message, but still, I'll take it. That's great. Jim Carrey. It's great. You're doing all your lovely art, and it's great that you've stopped doing your anti-vax stuff. But why don't you start playing board games and making funny faces and doing videos? I would love to see that. And to answer your question, that's what Mr. Beast could do. He could put the results and some cool video showing how much fun Dune Imperium is on his freaking channel. So people will... I know that him saying, I spent 7 days on a desert island will get him 10 million views, and his Dune Imperium will only get him 1.5 million views. Oh no, 1.5 million views. That's still more views than everybody else doing board game media would get in a year combined. So Mr. Beast, come on, throw us a bone. Give back to Dune Imperium and show us the freaking video. I'm shocked. And I could be wrong. Maybe it is there and I just don't have the skills to find it. Anyway, can you come up with other scenarios where board gaming could get an instant popularity jump? That's it. We live in a world where celebrity is everything. And it has been. Celebrity, whether it's movies or sports or these days, politicians. Celebrity worship is the fundamental driving force for pop culture. And it has been for, I want to say centuries. It has been for at least a century. Ever since, modern media became a thing when we started doing movies. Was it the case? I mean, what was there a cult of personality around Dickens? Maybe there was. I don't know. I literally don't know. I'm genuinely curious. But, cult of personality and celebrity trend setting is everything. So what else could we be doing to get this? We need, and board games are so tiny. It's not like we can afford to get Kim Kardashian nobody can afford to pay Kim Kardashian the $50 million that is her fee to talk about something on Instagram. But if we could, we should. And that would be great. And that would be such a huge boost to the industry. And you know what that would do? That would help all the friendly local game stores, all those mom and pops. Maybe they wouldn't have to engage in the behavior that George finds distasteful. If you heard the earlier question from this podcast. Anyway, though, how well board gaming is done lately, popularity-wise? It's interesting. And I'm sure you mean how well is board gaming doing popularity-wise? It was kind of going through a bump for a while, but I think that's I don't know. I don't have access to sales charts. You're better off not asking me. You're better off. Here's my number one data point I can give you. Jamie Stegmaier, the head of Stonemaier Games, he does a yearly report talking about how well his sales did this year, and then you can compare to how well did his sales do last year and the year before. His most recent one, he reported, I forget, it was either like a 20 or 30% drop off. And that's not great. That doesn't help. And if he, again, arguably, if not the most successful, one of the most successful publishers in the entire board game industry is having that kind of drop off, you can imagine what's happening to all the little mom and pops, all the independents. And that's why they use Kickstarter to get your money up front. And that's why board game stores take pre-orders and push pre-orders so they can get your money up front so they can pay their bills and not go out of business. Sorry, this is bleeding into the previous question. Anyway, though, so no, Here's a fascinating thing that I read somewhere, an interview, I think, with somebody from Renegade Games, another great publisher, who recently, I don't know if you've noticed, Renegade Games used to do a lot more original IP. Nowadays, they are all in on the G.I. Joe and the Transformers because, getting a major IP like that is going to help them sell. But, and I don't blame them. I can't fault them. And it doesn't mean a G.I. Joe or a Transformer game has to be bad. I thought the Transformers deck builder was actually pretty good when I played it. But I just have no interest in Transformers. But, what was it? Oh, yeah. They talked about how, it was like 6 months or a year into, the main lockdown, right? When everybody was trapped at home. They said, what we did? We doubled down on jigsaw puzzles. And we went hard into jigsaw puzzles because apparently that's where the money was. When everybody was going on Amazon and saying, well, look, I'm stuck here at home with my friends and family, and you'd think that means everybody starts to buy more board games. And I'm sure there was a bump. I'm sure there was. But you know what they really started buying? Jigsaw puzzles. So there's a data point for you. Anyway, that's why Mr. Beast needs to release the Dune Imperium video. And if he really loves board games, man, he could do us a real solid and just make that a monthly thing. Hey, here's the board game I'm talking about this month. Joshko says, this is a response to some comment from your Q&A. This is more of a comment than a question. I like to watch your run-throughs because of your excitement and fluidity in delivery. It made me, on occasion, believe that I would be just as excited playing the game. 2 examples are Calico and Riverside. Both games are very crunchy. And while I enjoy the puzzle they present, I don't enjoy it when there are other players involved and we are all heads down doing the crunching. Your excitement and narration made me feel like there wouldn't be those long silent moments in the game. That is an amazing observation, Joshko. You are 100% right. Wow. That's a hell of a statement, and it's spot on, quite frankly, because you're right. I have always prided myself, even just in this very episode of the podcast earlier, I was talking about, on one of the earlier questions about how really, I work so hard to make sure I reflect the fun of the game. But I also never stop talking. I take turns very fast. And even when I'm taking a long time, I am verbalizing the everything that's going on in my brain to make a move. And of course, what goes in on our brains is what makes board games fun. And in that regard, if my presentation style, I am arguably doing the game a disservice because when I cover a crunchy game with a lot of head down moments, you are not getting that. You are not getting that experience from me. You are getting an alternate version. You haven't had a question yet. I don't think you're going to, but yeah, that's a real. Let's finish your thing and then I'll comment. With that said, I want you to know I like your excitement. So don't take that as a complaint. I don't feel cheated or anything like that. I just wanted to give you the answer how watching your playthrough can make someone like me buy a game and end up not liking it. So don't change because of this comment, smiley face. Joshko, this is fantastic. For years, people complain about me, and I say, well, give me specifics, and everybody just shuts up. All the people out there who are constantly, especially on Reddit, but on Board Game Geek too, Rahdo's such a shill. He does nothing but lie for money and misrepresents games. And I always, every time I see that, most of the time I ignore it, but like 1 out of every 20 times I see it, I'll say, hey, here's a list of the 2,000 games I've covered over the last decade. Please point to one, just one where I lie. And show me the lie. Joshko, you just did it. I think you're the first person in almost a decade telling people to do that, where you have just demonstrated something that I am actively misleading. And you have literally rocked me to my core. And I thank you for it. Let's continue before all right. This also touches a bit on the contributors. While they all follow your style, it is difficult to follow your delivery. I prefer to watch you do a run through but out of the contributors, my favorite is Kimberly. I will not say favorites, but I will say I really enjoy Kimberly. I enjoy everybody though. Everybody, because again, half of my presentation is the manner in which information is relayed to the viewer. Right? And that is the main thing I have tried to ensure that everybody on the channel does. That they do the same approach of making choices that demonstrate as much as possible about the game in as short a period as time, and that they articulate the thought process that would lead them to make strategic choice X and avoid strategic choice Y. Those are the guiding principles, and everybody does it great, but they are all different people with different lifestyle experiences. And yeah, who in the world is as big and loud and flamboyant and boisterous and fast talking as me? Very few people. But I would say it's interesting you point out Kimberly as being your second favorite, because everybody else on the channel, I think Kimberly comes the closest. Kimberly is just such a ray of sunshine, and and that's not to say that Shay isn't a happy, wonderful person too. I've played games with him in real life. I think he's great. But yeah, Kimberly, I think, goes above and beyond in terms of, just the fact that when Kimberly started saying, I told everybody, hey, here's the way I open. Hey, everybody, today we're running blah, blah, but please turn on your Klingon subtitles. And I told everybody, say to put on the Klingon subtitles, so if you make a rules goof, you'll know what they are. And Kimberly didn't do that. She changed it to, if I have an oops moment. And I thought that was hilarious the first time. And it's just a reflection of her putting her own little spin on it. She uses more... If you wanted to be negative about it, you could say she's a bit more twee than me. She's a bit more cutesy than me. But still, she has that energy and that enthusiasm. And I really enjoy it too. But again, I enjoy everybody on the channel. I'm not saying I have a favorite. But I do not mind if you want to say you have a favorite. And it is certainly true that at the end of the day, heck, I talked about this earlier. A big part of what people like is celebrity. And, why do you like celebrity? Because you like them as a person. You like how they talk. You like how they look. You like how they comport themselves. And I talk, look, and comport myself differently than anybody else on the channel at the end of the day. And short of getting... actually, man, the other day... I did a test run of an AI voice-generated thing where it had me read 10 minutes of text, and I read it in my normal, upbeat, really high-impact, octane, energetic reading. And then I had to do some stuff, and Jen shut her eyes and said, I almost can't tell if that's not you in full-on Rahdo mode. So... hey, before too long, maybe I can just have AI do all of this for me. And you won't even be able to tell the difference. Probably that's the reality. But in the meantime, I've got contributors, and they bring their own voice and their own life experiences, and I think that's wonderful, and diversity is great. But anyway, so back to your point, that there is one thing that I am misleading on, is that I do not capture, because of the very nature of my presentation style, the implicit heads down crunchiness of a Calico or a Riverside. And I make every game look just like it's a fun, boisterous afternoon with everybody joshing and making and singing and dancing else. And here's the thing. If you ever play with me in real life, when I'm not taking my turn, I am probably bouncing in my seat. I might literally be singing a song just to fill in that silence. But that's me. The game doesn't provide that for you. Do I need to do something about that? It's interesting, because your point is that's why you rely on the final thoughts, because I will often point out, I just did this today. Just today, as I'm filming this, I posted the Sixth Sense video. And people who say I never critique anything never watch my frickin' videos. Or they've only ever watched one, because in the Sixth Sense video, I pointed out that this is a game with a lot of analysis paralysis and a lot of downtime, and you got to know that going in. So I don't always. I would be shocked if I actually said that in Calico. But you can make an argument that you need a Calico. Here's the thing, though. I only play two-player. I never play four-player. One of the reasons I never play four-player is because often I find myself not enjoying a four-player game because it takes so long for my turn to come around. It already takes long enough because I'm playing with Jen. Jen, by herself, is like playing against 4 players because she's so thoughtful and analytic and just goes on, and lets her brain, run around in circles for a long time. So doing that and then having other people like her at the table is when me, not always, but I tend to be the player who comes around to me and like, beep, beep, bop, boop, and I'm done. And okay, now I'll wait 5 more minutes. And yeah, you only had to wait 15 seconds for me. Because honestly, if I ever find myself in a situation where I'm having to like navigate a Byzantine branching path, neural network representation of the 20 different things I could do and all their knock-on effects, I am not having fun. That's a game that I can do it. I was about to say it's too much for me. It's not too much for me. Of course I can do it. But I can't do it and have fun doing it. And so I, over the years, have developed a play style that is all about, as fast as I can, eliminating through broad swaths as many options as possible, just based on a few things like choices I've made previously, just instinct. I play on instinct a lot, and it bites me in the butt, and it's why I lose more often than win when I play Jen. I know this, but I have to do it to ensure that I'm having fun, because for me it's not fun to turn on the calculus or turn on the abacus in my head once again and figure out the best way to go amongst these 3 different ways that branch into 20 different ultimate options. But I don't reflect this in the video. I'm just trying to imagine playing a game. I mean, I could repeatedly over and over again. I mean, I will often say, no, I won't. If I'm demonstrating a 2-player game, you're getting, basically, it feels like it's a long uninterrupted stream because you're hearing my thoughts and then you're hearing Jen's thoughts. And what you're not hearing is, while I'm spending 2 or 3 or 4 minutes describing all the thought processes that goes into Jen's move, what I am not portraying is the fact that the Rahdo player is sitting there in silence for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes waiting for the Jen player to make her decision. And that just doesn't come across at all. You have really, was it Joshko again? Joshko, you have really given me something to crunch on. I need to think about this for a while. Because yeah, I have been misleading people for a long time. And you're right. The final thoughts, more often than not, I do tend to bring that up. You didn't have a question. I don't have an answer. But, you've given me food for thought. Thank you. Juan says, as much as I hate the Clemens Franz art style, no one can deny how big an influence and reference he is to the whole board game industry. Looking beyond his line style, his awkward take on human figures, the old-fashioned serif typography used throughout his designs, Franz has developed a board game design system that few can rival. The consistent iconography, legibility of his compositions, and easy-to-understand /remember sequences are impressive. Was Clemens Franz... I agree. I agree with everything you say. Now... I know there are some people who just vehemently despise his art style. I find his art style to be charming and quirky. But I, as a child of the 70s, grew up, one of my favorite things to do was read the funny pages in the newspaper, because my parents got the newspaper every day and I read the funny pages. And so I grew up on a steady diet of a wide range of squiggly art styles. And honestly, I think Clemens Franz is everywhere just as good as Marmaduke, quite frankly. And so for me, he evokes a nostalgic view of my childhood, reading simple cartoon images and bringing them to life. And one thing he forgot to mention that I think he doesn't get as much credit for as he should, he so peppers his games with Easter eggs as well. If you look closely, there's always fun little details hidden in the nooks and crannies and whatnot. But anyway, like him or not, I think you have made an objectively true statement that he is a master of clear visual storytelling, but rules telling. The rules come through his presentation style so much better than pretty much just anybody else out there. And you're right, he probably is a real strong influence, and that's great. I don't know. I've never heard anybody say that other than you, but I do. I like it. It feels right. It's got the air of truthiness to it. But anyway, you continue. Was Clemens Franz the pioneer artist of modern board games? Who came before him? Who rivals him? And why do you consider, and who do you consider your top artists or artists? In my humble opinion, Beth Sobel and Ian O'Toole belong in the conversation of greatest all time, but Clemens Franz is probably the one who laid the path. Honorable mentions, Javier Gonzalez Cava for his incredible work in Cooper Island. Surprise! He's co-worked with Clemens Franz in this game and others. You know, it's interesting you bring up Ian O'Toole. I think Ian O'Toole is a real master. Because Ian O'Toole tends, more and more these days, he's working on lighter games, but he tends, because he really got so strongly associated with Vito Lasarda designs, right? And those are big, huge behemoth monsters of games. And yet Ian O'Toole, with his visual language that he uses to make his, at times austere or spare, but clean and easy to digest art. I think that's a great example too. To answer your question about my top artists, I have done 2 top 10s in the past. Is that true? Let me do a search. Rahdo, top 10 artists. If I come back over to the browser, you will find I have a top 10 board game artists. I know I have a second one because I did this twice. Oh yeah, that's revisited. All right, let's not do this via Google. Let's go to YouTube proper and do Rahdo, top 10 artists. Right. So gosh darn it, I know I've done 2. All right. So now we're going to have to go behind the scenes because Google will only search one. Searches for me work so weird in YouTube. I'm so often surprised at things that I've done that I have more views. If you do a search for some game and I've got 5 times as much views as any other channel, and yet my channel ends up way at the bottom of the list, I don't understand why that is. I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, artists. Gosh darn it! Maybe I only did one. Artist. All right, just art. Oh, I remember. Okay. Board. No. All right. There's a lot of course, there's too many things. Boards? Yes, here we go. This is what I did twice. I at one point did a Rahdo top 10 artists, and Clemens Franz made my list, along with 9 others. And then I've also, separately, I have done 2 videos. My top 10 game boards. Just the boards themselves. I did this twice. I gave you a top 20 apparently because I had so much to say. I think one of these videos, if I recall correctly, was me evaluating the boards based on their communication, based on their utility, based on how they improve the playability of the game, which is what you're talking about. And then the other one I did was, what's the prettiest? Which, of course, is a different thing. And ideally, you want to combine both of them. And many would say that Franz does not. But anyway, to answer your question, there's some stuff. Do a search for Rahdo Top 10 Artists and Rahdo Top 10 Board Game Boards, Parts 1 and 2. So that'll get you started. But now, let's go to Board Game Geek. And unfortunately, I don't think you can search for an artist in the advanced search, can you? Oh, but no. Okay, let's go to Agricola. What is Clemens Franz's first game that he was the artist on? So we find Clemens Franz, we then click on him, and wow, he himself, his first notable game was 2007's Agricola. But let's sort by date. And then sort by date again to get it the other way. Nope, do I have to go to the end now? Do I have to go to page 71 or 371? Will you not let me? Oh my gosh. Oh no, but okay, it's not going to take too long. All right, so here we are at the end. What? Oh, some of these don't have dates. All right. So 1861, the game of, all right, so yeah, so he did some art on some reprint. All right, so these are some very old games. 1974, Can't Stop. He did art on Can't Stop, apparently. 1853, I'm going to assume family, or probably 1853. An 18XX game was his first game. And then Billabong, something that nobody's heard of or remembers. But yeah, look at that, 1853. That is clearly him. I can just tell. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then Billabong, a game lost to history from designer Eric Solomon. But then you got Bonanza. So yeah, because if I recall correctly, I think he is a co-founder of Lookout Games. I think he is a principal I like a co-owner or something like that. So of course, when we think of him, we think of Agricola and all the work he's done for them. But anyway, yeah. So then we got 2007. So here's what I was really trying to do. Oh my gosh, Neuland. Is that him? Yes, of course it is. And this is interesting. You want ugly Clemens Franz. This is early Clemens Franz. This is, but I mean, even still, look at that trademark, detailed art that is designed to be, what would you say, unobtrusive, pleasantly unobtrusive. That is the definition of Clemens, and I'm sure he worked on the graphic design of this game, and you just look at this and you immediately know what is happening here. So 2004, Neuland, or maybe it's Newland. And was there anything prior to that? Because what I'm trying to do, Bonanza. He was also the artist on Bonanza. And so what I want to do is now, I want to look at the top games before I'm going to say, it looks like 2006, 2007. With Agricola. Agricola was such a watershed moment for the industry. Right, so I'm going to go with 2007. Now, let's go to Advanced Search, which is there it is, right there. I don't know why it's hidden. Right, so let's look at games from 1995 to 2006, right? And I don't care about expansions. Submit. And what are the biggest games? Twilight Struggle. And now what I want to do is I want to look through these and see, are there any games that could have been as influential as Franz before Franz? And right out of the gate, you've got Power Grid. I think that's worth talking about. Puerto Rico, I don't think is anything particularly to talk about, at least the original one. Raw? No, there's not much there to hang your head on. Not like a Clemens Franz design. Memoir 44 in 2004, that's interesting. Railways of the World in 2005, probably not. Carcassonne. Carcassonne is worth talking about. Although, again, there's almost nothing there. Ticket to Ride. Who is responsible for Ticket to Ride? That's an interesting one. The original Samurai from 98. I wish I could sort this by date and go back and back further, but I can't. What I can do is do a search for parentheses, 1909. All right, so Tigris and Euphrates. Who is the artist on that? El Grande. Oh, that's important. Let's look at El Grande. Samurai Tikal. Chinatown. Let's look at that. That is interesting. Pitch Car. There's no art there. That's Hot Wheels. High Society. That's practically a deck of cards. Catan. Of course. Who is the artist for Catan? I don't know. Yeah, okay. So let's look at these. Artists. You got, right, so that was Clemens Franz, and that was Clemens Franz, and that was Clemens Franz. Power Grid, that's a bunch of artists. Oh, because a million people have worked on it. But Harold Lesky, he's been around forever, right? Australia. So he's another OG. And I think a lot of people mistake his art for Clemens Franz and vice versa. Because they both. So I think he deserves a nod for, pleasant and unobtrusive. So let's give him a nod. Right, and you got a bunch of higher end. I haven't seen Memoir 2044 in a million years. I don't remember what it looks like. It's mostly there's not much. It's mostly just simple. Yeah, I'm not interested. Railways of the World. You got a bunch of artists. Carcassonne. Well, look at all these artists on Carcassonne. Interesting. Chris Quilliams, if I recall correctly, made my top 10 artists when I did that list, whatever it was, 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah, Carcassonne is interesting. Carcassonne doesn't actually have almost any iconography, very little. So I don't think it's as interesting a one to talk about, really. Ticket to Ride. Cyril Dujardin, Dujon and Julien Duval. Who are these two people? Oh, Castles of Burgundy. Wow. And Castles of Burgundy is another great example of, hey, you know what? It's pleasant enough to look at, but it's super instantly playable. And then, oh man, he worked on Res Arcana. What interesting. And did some cards for Dominion and whatnot. And who was your teammate on? All right, you were the illustrator and cartoonist. And then you've got Cyril, who did Memoir 44 and Small World. Okay, I am not widely familiar with the works of Cyril Dujon. And I'm sure I'm getting your name right, Cyril, but you probably warrant, as you were doing the good work in the early days. Although still, that's the 2000s. Who did Franz Volkenkel did this back in 98, and also is Mr. Puerto Rico. And then, wow, still working today with Beyond the Sun. That's amazing. And working on Clank and the Quest for El Dorado. So there's another name that I think probably gets the original Tiger Fury. Too many artists. I don't know who. El Grande. I'm not sure. Too many names. Chinatown. Hey, there's Franz Volkenkel again. That's everybody. Give a round of applause to Franz and some of these other artists who really paved the way, and who, it would appear, came before, upon whose shoulders Clemens was standing when Clemens codified what they developed. So that was very fun. That was really interesting. That was a fun thought process. Thank you very much, Juan. Okay. And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.